This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
China's legislature, the National People's Congress, holds its second plenary session. South Africa to ease lockdown and reopen the economy on the 1st of June. And fears of medicine shortages in Nigeria due to the coronavirus pandemic. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Here are more stories making headlines this hour. In business news, the South African rand steadies after President Cyril Ramaphosa announces measures to ease the lockdown. And in your sport, Kenya joins the world in embracing esports amid the global lockdown. We begin in Beijing, where China's legislature, the National People's Congress, or NPC, held its second plenary session today. Chinese President Xi Jinping joined lawmakers in listening to the work reports of the Supreme People's Court, China's top prosecutor, the Supreme People's Procuratorate, and the NPC Standing Committee. The Standing Committee Chairman Li Zhangshu highlighted the legislature's priorities, among them safeguarding order in the special administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau, strengthening public health, and ensuring implementation of law banning wildlife consumption.
We enhanced the Standing Committee's contact with deputies. We improved mechanisms for members of the Standing Committee to get in touch with deputies and encouraged the special committees and working committees to remain in closer contact with deputies. The actual attendance in law enforcement inspections are 74 and 73 are in budget review and oversight. 298 meetings of the Standing Committee in a non-voting capacity have been held. We also foster closer ties between deputies and the people. We encourage local people's congresses to arrange for NPC deputies to attend activities organized by liaison offices and local legislative outreach offices close to them. Through different channels, we listen to the suggestions of the local people.
Chairman Li recapped the committee's work in the past year and laid out its focus for the future. Li added that the committee would continue adhering to the One China principle and promote peaceful development of cross-strait relations. He addressed the importance of the draft civil code, saying it represented a milestone in the country's advancement of the rule of law. President Xi has expressed his gratitude to the people of Hubei province and its capital Wuhan for their work fighting COVID-19. He joined discussions with lawmakers from Hubei during the two sessions. Yu Yang has the details.
Heroic. That's the word President Xi used to describe the people of Wuhan City and Hubei province.
The people of Hubei province and Wuhan City have made significant contribution and great sacrifice during our pandemic control and management work. Wuhan is indeed a heroic city, and the citizens in Hubei province and Wuhan City are indeed heroes of our people. I would like to extend the most honest greetings and the most sincere gratitude to all the cadres and the people here, as well as in Hubei province.
Noting the continued spread of the virus overseas, Xi urged further efforts to prevent both imported cases and another domestic outbreak. He said the most critical task at the moment for Hubei is to coordinate disease control work and economic development. The Chinese leader said the central government has provided a package of policies to help Hubei's economy, urging the region to work to ensure the security of 6 areas, including safeguarding jobs, ensuring people's basic livelihoods, and stabilizing the financial sector. He added the local government should pay attention to comforting the families who lost loved ones in the outbreak. During his discussion with the Hubei delegation, Xi also stressed the importance of building a comprehensive and efficient public health system. He believes China should improve its capacity to monitor future epidemics through an early warning system and emergency responses. The Chinese president ordered strengthening drills and trainings to deal with the major epidemics. He says the country needs to speed up the construction of standard and efficient public health legal system. Youyang, CGTN.
The foreign minister also spoke about Hong Kong, calling it China's internal affairs and that it would not tolerate any external interference. China revealed plans to enact a new security law on the territory. Wang Yi said the legislation would help implement the principle of one country, two systems and stabilize Hong Kong's status as a global financial hub.
The decision by the National People's Congress is targeting a narrow category of acts that jeopardize China's national security. It will not affect Hong Kong's high degree of autonomy, the rights and freedom of Hong Kong residents, or the legitimate rights and interests of foreign investors in Hong Kong. Instead of being unnecessarily worried, people should have more confidence in Hong Kong's future.
The National People's Congress Standing Committee says China's legislature will work to safeguard the constitutional order in Hong Kong and Macau's special administrative regions. Former Hong Kong Chief Executive Tung Ching-hua gave a televised speech earlier.
I hope everyone understands that national security laws aim to fully protect the country, including Hong Kong. These laws can protect ordinary people, that is, every family and every person.
To help foreign business during the pandemic and secure more foreign investment, China will further open up its market and provide more tax incentives to foreign business entities. At the Ministers' Corridor event today, Minister of Commerce Zhang Shan said China places importance on foreign trade and foreign investment and that new policies to support these amid the pandemic would be developed.
We have provided a wide range of support in terms of financial support, financing, supply chain, and procurement chain. Our efforts have helped those enterprises to reduce their burdens and mitigate their risks, and also to invigorate their vitality. And we believe that as long as the entities of foreign trade in our country are stable, then the fundamentals of foreign trade can be stabilized and further developed. From the perspective of foreign capital, we have to do very well the following. One, we have to expand the added value of foreign capital. And this requires us to further expand our foreign openness, to relax limitations on foreign capital entry, and to shorten the negative list. And this also entails that we build a higher level platform for foreign openness. In particular, we have to do a good job in building FTZs and free trade ports so that foreign investors are willing to settle here in China.
Chinese President Xi Jinping's speeches at the World Health Assembly and at the two sessions that is currently being held in China have attracted international attention. The Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Viviers, says China's commitment to building better health systems and helping in recovery efforts from COVID-19 is welcome for African countries.
His Excellency President Xi Jinping mentioned at the WHO opening and said that China will be willing to participate in that, and I think that is particularly important given the importance of Chinese debt service requirements on the African continent and the huge and enormous needs for liquidity that our countries need. I think that that's a very welcome announcement coming directly from President Xi himself. We are on a continent where we are approaching at least 20 to 30 million jobs that may no longer come back. And so we really do need some ways of ensuring that we can reinvest and we can ensure that our businesses, I think the first thing to do, and I think that's what China is also doing, is to invest in the existing businesses to keep them afloat quickly. But also there is a humanitarian crisis, and we needed to make sure the president has announced the refurbishment of 30 hospitals in 30 countries, sort of health facilities in 30 countries, also sending out health and medical expertise. The Economic Commission for Africa has a partnership with Ant Financials on digital technology, and we've done a webinar with Eric Jing, essentially to see how you keep business open in the time of COVID, and learning from China how we were able to use ICT to do that. So I think there's a lot of cooperation going on and a lot that's happening in both countries and both continents that we hope can spur some hope and help us in the recovery. This is unprecedented. In any economy, it's unprecedented in the globe. And so I think that it is prudent, probably, not to sort of get anchored on a particular target right now. I think the important thing is to see, one, whether we can continue to save lives, and then two, how we start rebuilding this economy. I think one thing is for sure, trade is going to continue to be one of the things that lifts us out of the sort of economic depression that we are in today. You know, we're going to have to look at electronic trading. China is a champion and a leader in electronic trading. We were able to sell coffee. In 1 second, we sold 3,000 tons of coffee on the Jack Ma electronic world trade platform. We hope we can do more of that. Africa itself is doing the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement conversations, where we hope to open our own continental markets to trade more, to trade better, and to produce more goods that eventually we can also sell. We will be coming out of this pandemic, and we just need to make sure that we build a stronger multilateral system, a system of stronger, better collaboration, so that collaboration helps us to accelerate the recovery period, because we cannot take too long to recover. There's too many lives at stake, too many economies at stake, too many jobs at stake across the world. China is going to have to play an important role in that process. For the continent, we continue to ask for China's support on the fiscal stimulus, on the G20 initiative, but also, and more importantly, with our private sector on the continent to see how we can partner, do PPPs, and bring back the private sector and ensure that we can create more jobs.
Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba Group, through the electronic world trade platform, is hoping to become a digital game changer in Africa. The virtual platforms it is setting the drive toward globalization by reducing barriers to trade for small and medium enterprises. Recently, it helped promote Rwanda's coffee brands, with over 1.5 tons sold online to China. CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy brings us that report.
Alibaba Group, through the electronic world trade platform, is helping to connect African companies with consumers in China. A recent online event featured Rwanda's Gorilla Coffee, a brand from Rwanda Coffee Company. During its live streaming session, the brand sold its stock of 3,000 bags of coffee in just minutes. Senior manager of Alibaba Globalization Office in charge of African affairs hopes to bring more African produce to other markets via the EWTP, stressing the importance of revitalizing global trade.
We definitely believe in the future of globalization. In fact, I'm very optimistic about the future of globalization. So actually, digital platform, digital economy, or digital infrastructure become even more important to drive globalization during this particular era when the world is impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Rwanda's Gorilla Coffee, which is available on Alibaba's platforms, has seen over 20 million Chinese coffee lovers access the product through Tmall, a subsidiary online platform of Alibaba. First proposed by Alibaba Group founder Jack Ma in 2016, the electronic world trade platform has been recognized by the G20 and has launched in China, Rwanda, Ethiopia, Malaysia, and Belgium. The EWTP, an Alibaba-led initiative, aims to reduce barriers to global trade for small and medium-sized enterprises in Africa and globally through e-commerce.
We're trying to empower the Rwanda coffee producers to produce more coffee that is more tailored for Chinese people, Chinese consumers' taste. So in that case, we do see great future for its market promise in China.
Rwandan coffee has become increasingly popular in China, with branded coffee chains like Starbucks stocking it. Rwandan producers are now able to sell directly to a much larger set of customers than before, while bypassing costly intermediaries.
We were able to sell coffee. In 1 second, we sold 3,000 tons of coffee on the Jack Ma electronic world trade platform. We hope we can do more of that. Africa itself is doing the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement conversations, where we hope to open our own continental markets to trade more, to trade better, and to produce more goods that eventually we can also sell to China.
Rwandan farmers who used to earn only $1 for a kilogram of coffee beans have since seen their incomes increase substantially since the introduction of the EWTP. For now, Alibaba has signed agreement with Rwanda and Ethiopia to develop EWTP in Africa. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
China has been Africa's biggest trading partner for over the last decade. Earlier, we spoke with Ali Khan, Sotri, CEO of investment advisory firm Rich Management Limited. We asked him about what a post-COVID world trade order looks like between Africa and China.
Last 2 decades, the China-Africa relationship has grown by leaps and bounds. I think 20 years ago, it was about $10 billion. Today, it's at around $200 billion. But what we've had happen this year is, of course, COVID-19. We've seen an enormous slump in commodity prices. Oil prices, for example, traded negative not too long ago. So we're going to see a sharp move lower in the volume of that relationship this year. Essentially, COVID-19 has been a circuit breaker. But in the medium term, of course, we're going to see that recover back to the sorts of areas we were in 2018 and 2019. But make no mistake, COVID-19 is a circuit breaker, and it's going to impact China-Africa trade quite dramatically, essentially because of the price movements that we've seen in the global markets. China is actually the biggest creditor to the African continent, ahead of the IMF and the World Bank. So therefore, this is the elephant in the room. And there's been a lot of discussion because you've seen moratoriums from the World Bank, from the IMF, trying to give oxygen to African economies, and a lot of pressure being put on China to do the same. China typically has a bilateral approach to its relations, but has made clear that it's looking to give some relief to African countries. So I think I expect China to make concessions. So I'm optimistic that we'll get a good solution.
After the break, we bring you more news making headlines. Here's what's still to come. South Africa to ease lockdown and reopen the economy on June the 1st. And fears of medicine shortages in Nigeria due to the coronavirus pandemic.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
Welcome you back. You are watching News Making Headlines right here on Africa Live. Well, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced the easing of the country's lockdown that will reopen the economy and allow more unrestricted movement on the 1st of June. In a televised national address, President Ramaphosa said the nationwide lockdown had been effective, but it could not be sustained indefinitely. CGTN's Yulisa Jamela brings us that report.
The South African government employs a risk-adjusted easing of the lockdown, which entails 5 levels. Level 5 is the most severe, while Level 1 means life will be relatively back to normal.
Moving to Alert Level 3 marks a significant shift in our approach to the pandemic. This will result in the opening up of the economy and the removal of a number of restrictions on the movement of people, while significantly expanding and intensifying our public health interventions.
With this level, the national curfew will be removed, alcohol will be sold during certain hours, and there will be no time limit on exercise as long as they're not done in groups. The ban on tobacco products will, however, continue. In his address, President Ramaphosa emphasized that any part of the country could return to alert levels 4 or 5 if the spread of infection is not contained and if there's a risk of health facilities being overwhelmed. Some metropolitan municipalities have been identified as COVID-19 hotspots. Those include Cape Town and Johannesburg. A coronavirus hotspot is where there are 5 or more COVID-19 infections per 100,000 people, or where new infections are increasing at a fast pace.
We are particularly concerned about the situation in the city of Cape Town and in the Western Cape generally, which now has more than half the total infections in the country. We are attending to this as a matter of urgency.
The president also revealed that the vaccines industry in South Africa will be part of distributing any possible vaccine.
There is a massive global effort to develop a vaccine, of which our own country, South Africa, is part. Government is supporting and funding several research projects, including a plan to locally manufacture coronavirus vaccines as soon as candidates are available.
While several restrictions have been lifted, some will remain in place, including the continued closure of taverns, bars and restaurants, unless for delivery and collection of cooked food. Mass gatherings such as sports events and church sermons will remain prohibited. The president has asked those who do not need to go to work to perform their work duties to continue working from home. Yulisa Jamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Tanzanians are celebrating what they believe is a victory in combating the spread of COVID-19 in the country. President John Magufuli says the number of coronavirus patients has declined, and Dar es Salaam's regional commissioner, Paul Makonda, has asked residents of the country's largest city to celebrate that development in whatever way they can. Tanzania has confirmed 509 cases and 21 deaths. CGTN's Isaac Lukando reports.
These churchgoers are in a celebratory mood. The Tanzanian government says the number of coronavirus patients in the country is going down, and it has now called for 3 days of Thanksgiving. The pastor of this church sees a reason for celebration.
We are seeing people recover, and so just that shows that we have nowhere else to go except to run to the house of the Lord and tell God, thank you for what he is doing in the country.
Residents of Dar es Salaam have been asked to dress up to celebrate, with some shops even offering discounts on clothing items. However, some critics have accused the government of downplaying the risks of the pandemic. The Dar es Salaam regional commissioner thinks otherwise.
As our president said, given our situation and projections by experts in the world, what we have is nothing short of a miracle.
While there is encouragement to get out and celebrate, there are some who have chosen to stay indoors.
The government has assured to us that the number of the cases has dropped significantly. So this is something which I'm really happy, and I'm happy because now life can get back to normal, although precautions against this disease has to be still there.
The Tanzanian government has not released any new figures on confirmed COVID-19 cases. This is due to ongoing investigations into the operations of the national laboratory. Some people believe that the worst is now behind them.
The fear of COVID-19 has diminished. Why? On my part, the rate of the coronavirus patients has gone down daily from the initial number, and I have stayed indoors for a long time, so I thought it best to go out today and get some fresh air.
The government's announcement of a reduction in the number of coronavirus patients seems to have given some citizens a renewed sense of hope. This beach has been empty in recent weeks, but now has people flocking to it, a sign that perhaps things may be slowly returning to normal. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Nigeria may soon be hit by a shortage of medicine. That's according to the country's Food and Drug Administration and Control. Nigeria imports 70% of its medicines from Asian countries like India and China. But as CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam reports, imports are being hampered by the pandemic.
Weng Sunday runs this pharmacy in north-central Plateau State. The decade-old business provides a wide range of pharmaceutical products to thousands of locals at an affordable rate. But not anymore. Since the coronavirus hit, drug supply has drastically declined, and that has affected prices too.
It has shown already. In the last 2 months, business is not the same. You can see that you're not even seeing the reps who used to come around. And when you see them and you ask, okay, we need this, they tell you it's not available. And sometimes when they even say, it's coming, you now hear the price has gone up. So there's a big transition for us. There are so many things that have changed within this period of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then customers react to price more than anything else.
Nigeria relies heavily on imports, one of its top 10 being pharmaceutical products. The National Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, says 70% of medicines consumed in Nigeria are imported from China and India. In 2019 alone, the country spent $1.5 billion on pharmaceutical imports. China and India, Nigeria's major suppliers, have also been badly hit by COVID-19, slowing down importation. The impact of this may be a full-blown medical crisis.
In terms of the effect of COVID pandemic on availability of drug, it has had a very, very serious effect. I was at a meeting 2 days ago, African farmer meeting, and it is the same story in the country. A manufacturer was buying 1 kilogram of medicine of drug, active pharmaceutical ingredient, for $31. From the same supplier, it is now $600. From $31 to $600. That is even the fact that this person wouldn't have even gotten it. So it is the same thing with our manufacturers here, because we don't manufacture anything in Nigeria. Only water for local manufacturers. That's the only thing they can get in Nigeria. Everything has to be imported.
Seriously, business is going to suffer. You see, in pharmacy business, one thing we work with is expiry dates. We might have some drugs expire on us. We've not sold them, because if customers are not coming to buy, then the stock we had in the past will just be there. And then people that used to buy drugs because of health conditions that they are managing might not be able to afford those drugs. So if things don't get back to normal, there's a lot that is at stake, both to the customers, to the us who are running the business, and everyone who is involved in the process.
A report by Trading Economics shows Nigeria's import bill grew by 26.4% in 2019 to hit $47.4 billion, a situation economists consider unsafe for its ailing economy. They suggest revamping industries and empowering local manufacturers as the way out of its import dependence. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
On Sunday, Muslims across the world mark the Eid al-Fitr holiday. It's one of the two main festive seasons all year long. During the celebration, millions usually head for picnics in parks. However, that hasn't been the case this Eid after the Egyptian government cancelled mass prayers and extended the COVID-19 curfew hours. CGTN's Adela Al-Muruhi tells us more.
This is how Egyptians have been celebrating their Eid for centuries. They buy new clothes and celebrate in parks spread across all Egyptian cities. Usually this festive season begins with the Eid prayer, the official declaration that Ramadan has ended and the feast has begun. But this year, there are no signs of celebrations whatsoever.
All my life, I have never imagined that a time would come when the Eid prayer is cancelled. A curfew is in place and everybody is staying at home. It is a terrifying feeling to see that there is no spirit of Eid, no kids, and no parks. Cairo, the city that never sleeps, is shaking because of this pandemic. There is nowhere else that I can go because I cannot go and visit my family.
I'm very sad this Eid. It's been one of the best celebrations all year long. I understand that there are risks this year, and it's still the first time in our lives to see no joy in the streets.
Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Egyptian government has shut parks and banned the Eid prayer. It has also extended curfew hours this week to begin at 5 o'clock in the evening instead of 9.
This has always been one of the busiest and most crowded squares in Egypt during Eid. It has become deserted, and so does all the other public places in the country. The pandemic may have taken away the main event in the Islamic feast, but there are those who will celebrate in their own ways.
It's still a festive season no matter what, so I bought new clothes for the kids like we do every year. I gave them new banknotes, and we are spending all day to cook a great lunch. I want them to feel the spirits of Eid no matter what.
All shops and malls will be shut this week. Eid is usually celebrated over 3 days, but the government has given the entire week off, an attempt to curb the COVID-19 infection rate, which has recently surpassed an average of 700 new cases daily. Adil Al-Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
A group of 77 U.S. Nobel laureates expressed their concern for the recent cancellation of a federal grant to a research institute. The Eco-Health Alliance was researching coronaviruses and had worked with the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China. In an open letter to the heads of Health and Human Services and the National Institutes of Health, the Nobel laureates called the move a dangerous precedent, saying it interfered with science and jeopardized public trust in federal funding for research. They say the researchers' work depended on collaborating with scientists in other countries, including China. Earlier, 31 societies also criticized the cancellation, saying it was politicizing science. Time now for us to take a short break. More news making headlines, and now take a look at what's making headlines in the world of business. The South African rand steadies after President Cyril Ramaphosa announces measures to ease the lockdown. And energy players in Zimbabwe call on Chinese manufacturers to shift base to Africa.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Time now for your business news. South Africa's rand held steady against the dollar early on Monday. This was a day after President Cyril Ramaphosa announced a further easing of the coronavirus lockdown from June the 1st, allowing the vast majority of the economy to return to production. The unit traded at $17.60 per dollar, compared with its close of $17.59 on Friday. South Africa's economy has been largely shut down since late March, when the government enforced severe restrictions to stem the spread of the novel coronavirus. The disease has so far infected nearly 22,600 people and killed 429 people in the country. South Africa's taxi industry is stepping up safety measures as the country prepares to downgrade its COVID-19 lockdown to level 3 from June the 1st. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
Taxis aren't the safest mode of transport in South Africa, but they're the cheapest and most popular. The industry is doing all it can to keep passengers and drivers safe from COVID-19. Wearing masks and hand cleaning is compulsory. Sanitizing booths are now being included to boost protection.
It's a simple technology that does not require a lot of things. You don't even stand inside, you just walk through slowly and it immediately disinfects you. It is very necessary to put this precaution in place because we want to flatten the curve first of all, and this big rank like this one, these are the big hubs rank where a lot of people they interchange, they're coming from townships.
This is the new reality for thousands of taxi rank passengers being sanitized from tip to toe, all in the hope to curb the spread of the virus.
I feel very safe because the taxi industry is actually following the rules and the regulations of the COVID-19. The government is putting pressure on them. That is why everywhere you go, you see there's booth, there's sanitizers, there's everything.
I think it's a good one. They should do it even in deep slot, in these rural areas. They should try using it everywhere. So in deep slot, we just sanitize our hands. We need to get something like this. That will be much safer.
Other precautions include driver screenings and regular disinfecting of vehicles and ranks.
We've been cleaning the rank thoroughly and make sure that the rank is clean, and also disinfecting the vehicle itself, inside and outside. And we've also educated our drivers and queue marshal that inside the vehicle where there's handles, they must carry on disinfecting the handles of the vehicles and inside the taxis.
In general, taxi drivers are in danger of transporting people every day. It's so overwhelming. If we can all follow the precautions that we've been given by our leaders. Wear your mask, leave the house only if you have to for essential stuff. And then maybe we can be able to go back to our normal life sooner than later.
Millions are expected to be on the move again as restrictions ease in June. The industry is hoping measures taken will prevent further infections. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Many businesses in Africa have been hit hard by the disruption to supply lines caused by the pandemic. In Zimbabwe, the energy industry is calling for partnerships with Chinese manufacturers to shift base to the continent to cushion companies from such shocks. CGTN's Farai Mokatuya reports from Harare.
Under normal circumstances, hundreds of solar light bulbs would be coming off Global Solar's production line. The company has benefited from the high quality and reasonably priced components it imports from China, which it uses to produce appropriate technology for a country that's facing an energy deficit and battling disease outbreaks.
Like the rechargeable bulb, how it works is when there is no ZESA, when there is ZESA, it charges. When there is no ZESA, then it will take about 3 to 4 hours lighting up the system, lighting up the whole house. If you have maybe let's say 8 rooms, you just need 8 bulbs and you can go for about 4 hours with the lighting. And the mosquito light here in Africa, I think that's the best solution usually in summer or also when there is a lot of rain, and to cater for the mosquito seasons.
But COVID-19 has brought operations to a standstill, forcing most of the company's 25-strong workforce to stay at home. Amidst the uncertainty, there's an opportunity to start producing the imported parts locally through partnerships with Chinese investors who can provide the capital and technical expertise.
What we have to do us in Africa is also to learn from them. We go there, we learn, and we come and then also make sure that we improve the technology locally. Like you see, we went there, we managed to acquire knowledge on how do we produce LED bulbs, Now we are doing it homegrown. Maybe the next step is to see where we can cut the value chain, start producing here, or even to partner them here. They come and produce some of the things that we are getting from there. They come here, they do it locally. We remove all the cost of transportation, especially with this COVID. It's also in their best interest to come and partner us, and we do everything from a local standing because of the movement of cargo, which is a problem.
Should that happen, it will create more jobs, generate much needed foreign direct investment, and help the country achieve its industrialization ambitions. Farang Makutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Senegalese shoppers have found one small piece of comfort amidst all the coronavirus chaos that has come in the form of a dive in the price of theof. This is a fish at the heart of their national dish, but the fishermen and the industries that support them have been hit hard by the pandemic. CGTN's Muhammad Abubakar has that story.
At a market in the northern port city of St. Louis, the streets are flooded with white grouper stock caught off the Atlantic coast. The fish is commonly known as theof in the local language. Served as a marinated delicacy on a bed of spicy rice, the dish has grown widely popular among the locals in recent years. However, the plummeting of costs in recent weeks, owing to the outbreak of the novel coronavirus, has brought about unforeseeable changes.
When this cursed disease arrived, all borders were closed, so it stopped all exports. Everything we produce, we have to consume. Chof is extremely expensive for the ordinary Senegalese, and its price has been lowered locally because that type of fish was meant to be for the foreign market. But now it's consumed locally.
Before, chof was $7 per kilo. It was expensive, so as a vendor it did not work for me. But now at $4 a kilo, I can buy some for my own consumption and sell the rest. It's really more accessible because planes are not flying anymore because of corona.
High demand from overseas escalated problems for many locals. It saw prices rise steeply, partly due to scarcity, global warming and overfishing by foreign trawlers. But now government emergency measures that will help tackle the spread of COVID-19 pave the way for the sale of theof in local markets.
Now, the chof is much cheaper because it does not sell as easily as before. So whatever amount of money you have, you'll be able to buy some.
Some customers are enjoying the resurgence of the noble fish as it is known in the main coastal cities. But for the artisanal fishermen, business has been disrupted by the government's implemented measures.
We are fishermen. All we know is the sea. We work on the sea. We have departure times, but we don't have specific times for when we come back. We can leave in the morning and come back just before sunset. But now timings have been imposed from 5 p.m. No one is allowed to work. The government should have tried to understand us. As soon as we come back from fishing expeditions, they should have allowed us to sell our catch.
Fishing is an important foreign exchange earner for the country, making up 16% of Senegal's GDP. With the restrictions hampering operations, the fishing industry is reeling with losses estimated in millions.
There is no work anymore. Because of the restrictions, we had to let go of 10 employees. Now we only have 5 people working, and we pay them every month. It's hard. They need to lower the price of electricity and water. Everything is expensive here. We used to work 24 hours a day. Now we barely work for 6 hours a day.
The impact of the coronavirus on Senegal's fishing industry has seen its focus drop 3.9%. Many fear businesses in the sector could fail to recover for a long time. Mohamed Abubakar, CGTN.
Let's move over to Europe now, where Germany's been unraveling its lockdown measures faster than most other countries in Europe. Hairdressers have been one of the first businesses to reopen. As CGTN's Guy Henderson reports, the sector's new norm is putting pressure on the whole sector.
At Beardy Boy's barber shop, beard trimming is now a rarity. Before all this, a luxury that was unavoidably up close and personal. Now, well, that's just not the done thing. It's one of many differences owner Silvio Colble's adapting to as businesses reopen. Interaction with customers isn't what it was either. Feels like being in a hospital, Silvio says. Very unpleasant. Customers are still coming. Entrepreneur Jonas Benjamin would have come sooner to fix his unruly mop after 6 months without a chop.
No, I think it was just super busy and actually difficult to get an appointment.
All customers must pay €5 extra now, a hygiene fee that's commonplace across the sector. Costs are higher, and while rents were paused, ultimately they must still be paid.
Short-term emergency aid was a drop in the ocean, maybe a third of our usual revenue. It's just a little help, but what is broken cannot be replaced.
Coming to a place like this is supposed to be a real experience. Customers come in and make themselves a drink, maybe read a magazine, but in the new norm, none of those things are allowed anymore. Instead, they're encouraged to turn up just a few minutes before their appointment and wait outside until they're called. Dennis Mascht is from the Berlin Hairdressers Guild and runs a chain of upmarket salons. Their larger size helps with social distancing and they have a decent financial cushion. Many smaller businesses have neither.
Also die Prognosen sind halt böse Zungen behaupten, dass bis zu 30%.
The pessimists predict that up to 30% of salons will not survive this scenario in the long run. Realistically, I think that it will definitely hit to 15 to 20% who just can't go on because it doesn't make financial sense anymore.
Back at Beardy Boy, Silvio's still smiling. He's sure looking forward to the day, though, when he no longer has to hide it. Guy Henderson, CGTN, Berlin.
Time now for a short break. When we return, in touch of Africa, mandatory masks made into fashion accessories in Africa.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes. The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Many countries have made it compulsory to wear masks in public to prevent the spread of COVID-19. On the African continent, there's a trend to make masks stylish. Local tailors and designers are combining style and safety by creating colorful masks with African fabric. Let's take a look.
There was a big shortage, we realized, of masks, that can be usable every day without having to throw it away. So that's what brought about the idea. But at the same time, you seeing that masks are going to be an everyday thing, you want to mask in style, so to say.
In the beginning of the pandemic, I thought that this was going to last just maybe a few months. Now I do believe that in the next 2 years, maybe, we're going to have to adapt and live with this virus. And, I think as a fashion designer, we're going to have to integrate with each outfit fashion masks, basically.
Your sport news is coming up after the break. Here's what you can expect. Kenya joins the world in adjusting to esports amid global lockdown.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's take a look at what's happening in the world of sport now. Like many countries affected by the global COVID-19 crisis, sporting activity has ground to a halt in Kenya. Enthusiasts in the East African country have now turned to esports to fill the gap, as CGTN's Muhammad Abubakar now reports.
COVID-19 has shaken up the sporting world, but globally, esports is on the rise since it can continue uninterrupted. In Kenya, Farid Kipirash, a founder of La Galat, a content creation hub that feeds the gaming community with interesting material, agrees that this is an exciting time for esports.
The stay-home directive has definitely helped esports, indirectly of course, but when you're confined in a space and the only thing that you can do in that space is interact with what you can reach, you'll see that certain things sort of skyrocketed and peaked. The gaming industry is no different, so esports has sort of benefited from this period indirectly.
However, despite being in a strong position for growth, esports still faces numerous challenges.
Funding and that sort of access to these tournaments, these esports tournaments and even online tournaments is definitely a challenge in terms of like furthering the sport. The second challenge I see is the audience. For anything to thrive, you need to have an audience that demands the content, that wants the content. So for me, I basically see this as a challenge because if the audience doesn't know this exists and is a consumable avenue for content, you will have very low numbers, and this proves a challenge in terms of ratings. And if your ratings are low, there will be fewer people willing to invest in your sport.
The setbacks have served as motivation, and according to Farid, the future is only going to get brighter for esports.
I'd say the future of esports is quite inviting because there are bigger budgets across the board. There's more players getting involved, and the audience is ever growing. So with a genre that's so niche, used to be so niche at least, esports and video gaming in general is growing, and it's looking to go into this space whereby it becomes the top form of entertainment.
With the right investments, esports in Kenya and Africa at large has something to look forward to in the near future. Mohammed Abubakar, CGTN.
We cross over to England, where footballers will be allowed to make tackles in close contact training as Britain looks for a